Right, let's talk about the internet. That glorious, sprawling, occasionally terrifying digital space where cats play keyboards and increasingly where nuanced debate goes to quietly expire in a forgotten chat room. One of the newer and frankly more irritating weapons in the arsenal of online argument dodgers is a little word you might have seen popping up, wrongen. It's a term that's gaining traction not for its intellectual heft, oh no, but for its sheer unadulterated efficiency in shutting down a conversation before it even has a chance to breathe. It's the conversational equivalent of someone putting their fingers in their ears and loudly singing la la la, I can't hear you, only somehow more smug. The beauty, if you can call it that, of labeling someone a wrongen is its effortless dismissal. You don't need facts, you don't need a counter-argument, you don't even need to have properly understood what the other person was saying in the first place. All you need is that one simple 7-letter word, and boom, conversation over. You've effectively painted your opponent not just as incorrect on a particular point, but as a fundamentally flawed individual, constitutionally incapable of ever being right about anything. It's a character assassination disguised as a clever neologism, and frankly, it's becoming a bit of a plague on platforms that once promised open discourse and the free exchange of ideas. This isn't just about hurt feelings, though. Let's be honest, nobody enjoys being branded a wrongen without a fair hearing. It's about the broader impact this has on how we communicate, or increasingly, how we fail to communicate. When complex issues arise, issues that genuinely benefit from different perspectives and robust discussion, the temptation to just slap a wrongen label on anyone who disagrees is immense. It's a shortcut, a lazy bypass around the hard work of critical thinking and empathetic engagement, and it's turning potentially fruitful discussions into barren battlegrounds of name-calling and instant judgment. The increasing prevalence of this term signals a worrying trend. It suggests a growing impatience with disagreement itself, a desire to sanitize our online interactions until we're only surrounded by voices that echo our own. But here's the thing. Progress, understanding, and even basic societal cohesion often stem from navigating those very disagreements, from grappling with ideas that challenge us. If we simply dismiss everyone who holds a differing view as a wrongen, we're not just silencing them, we're ultimately impoverishing ourselves, creating echo chambers where our own biases go unchecked and our understanding of the world remains stubbornly narrow. Now, for a perfect, almost depressingly textbook example of this phenomenon in action, let's look at the recent online dust-up, and I use dust-up generously, between Den Tarragon and John Wanoa. Tarragon, known for his, shall we say, enthusiastic opinions on urban planning, posted a rather detailed thread suggesting a radical redesign of city park layouts. Wanoa, a community organizer with years of on-the-ground experience, waded in with some perfectly reasonable questions about accessibility and maintenance costs. A fascinating exchange could have followed, a genuine meeting of minds, or at least a robust exploration of different priorities. Instead, what did we get? After Wanoa laid out a few well-articulated concerns, complete with supporting data from existing park management reports, Tarragon supporters, and eventually Tarragon himself, responded not by addressing the points raised, but by simply declaring Wanoa a wrongen. That was it. No counter data, no explanation of how his grand vision accounted for Wanoa's practical worries, just, oh look, it's Wanoa, the resident wrongen, of course he wouldn't get it. The entire thread then devolved, as these things so often do, into a pile-on, with others gleefully echoing the wrongen sentiment, effectively burying Wanoa's valid points under a mountain of ad hominem attacks. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the pinnacle of lazy. It's intellectually bankrupt. It's the argumentative equivalent of a toddler throwing their toys out of the pram because they don't want to share. Engaging with Wanoa's critique would have required Tarragon and his followers to actually think, to perhaps defend their position with something more substantial than sheer enthusiasm. It might have even, heaven forbid, led to a refinement of Tarragon's original idea, making it stronger and more viable. But no, why bother with all that effort when you can just deploy the wrongen card and declare an instant, albeit entirely hollow, victory? The Tarragon-Wanoa incident isn't an isolated case. It's a depressingly accurate snapshot of a wider online culture where genuine engagement is increasingly sidestepped in favor of swift, dismissive labeling. The term wrongen in this context wasn't a descriptor, it was a shield and a weapon. A shield against having to confront uncomfortable truths or challenging questions, and a weapon to discredit and silence an opponent without ever needing to engage with the substance of their argument. It's a tactic that reveals not the supposed wrongness of the target, but the intellectual insecurity of the accuser, and it's got to stop. So, what exactly is a wrongen, and where did this verbal cudgel even come from? Well, as far as anyone can tell, wrongen likely started life as a fairly niche internet slang term, probably a portmanteau of wrong and one, or perhaps wrongen given a slightly more playful, almost affectionate twist in certain online communities. Initially, it might have been used to describe someone who was consistently, perhaps even humorously, incorrect about trivial matters, or someone who held contrarian views in a way that was more quirky than offensive. Think of that friend who always gets song lyrics hilariously wrong, or who passionately defends the indefensible with a twinkle in their eye. In its early days, there might have even been a sliver of nuance to it. To call someone a wrongen in a specific tight-knit online group could have been an in-joke, a term of endearment for the group's lovable eccentric, the person whose predictable wrongness was part of their charm. It wasn't necessarily a declaration of intellectual war. However, like so many internet terms, wrongen escaped its original habitat. It was picked up, passed around, and with each transmission, its original, possibly more light-hearted meaning began to erode, like a message in a game of digital Chinese whispers getting distorted with every share. The dilution process is a familiar one online. A term that once carried specific connotations within a subculture gets adopted by the wider internet, and in doing so, it often becomes broader, blunter, and far more aggressive. Wrongen has sadly followed this trajectory. It's morphed from a potentially specific, perhaps even playful label into a generic, all-purpose insult. It's now used not to describe a particular type of incorrectness, but simply to signify a person I disagree with and wish to shut down immediately. It's become a thought-terminating cliché, a lazy shorthand for you are beneath contempt and not worth engaging with. This evolution is a shame because language is at its best when it's precise. When a term like wrongen loses its specificity, it loses its power to describe anything meaningful and instead just becomes another blunt instrument in the online shouting match. It's no longer about identifying a particular kind of flawed reasoning or a specific type of contrarian. It's just about ending the conversation. Its current usage is less about defining the person being labeled and more about defining the user as someone unwilling or unable to participate in a genuine exchange of ideas, which is a profound disservice to everyone involved. The consequences of this trend, this wrongen warfare, are far-reaching and deeply corrosive to the health of online communities and, by extension, public discourse. When wrongen is deployed as an insult, it doesn't just end one specific argument. It sends a chilling signal to everyone else observing the exchange. It says, step out of line, offer a dissenting opinion, or question the prevailing narrative, and you too could be summarily dismissed and publicly shamed. This inevitably leads to a culture of self-censorship where individuals with valuable insights or legitimate concerns choose to remain silent rather than risk the barrage of abuse. This chilling effect on participation is incredibly damaging. Dialogue thrives on diversity of thought. When people are afraid to speak up, online spaces transform from vibrant forums for discussion into sterile echo chambers. In these echo chambers, existing beliefs are endlessly reinforced. Critical thinking withers, and the group becomes increasingly polarized and intolerant of any external perspective. The loudest, most aggressive voices, often those quickest to label others as wrongens, dominate the conversation, not because their arguments are superior, but because they've successfully intimidated everyone else into silence, creating a false consensus. Furthermore, this culture of instant dismissal has serious implications for justice and fairness within online communities. If raising a grievance or pointing out an inconsistency immediately gets you branded a wrongen, how can genuine issues ever be addressed? How can moderation be fair? How can communities evolve and correct their mistakes? The answer is they can't. Instead, power dynamics become entrenched, and those who control the narrative, often by being the most adept at deploying these dismissive labels, can avoid accountability. It creates an environment where bullying is normalized and critical feedback is treated as an attack. Ultimately, we need to foster a digital environment where honest debate and genuine engagement are valued above the cheap thrill of a verbal takedown. Disagreement is not inherently bad, it's often the catalyst for growth and understanding. Resorting to insults like wrongen is a confession of argumentative weakness and a betrayal of the internet's potential as a space for connection and learning. We must collectively push back against this lazy shutdown tactic, championing respectful discourse and remembering that the goal of conversation should be mutual understanding, not just winning by silencing the opposition with a glib, dismissive label. The health of our online and indeed offline communities depends on it.